Mic check, 1, 2, 3. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to The Sweat. I'm your host, Jessie Coffield. Today is a tough Monday because we're really back to our regularly scheduled programming. There's no holiday to break things up this week, so let's just make the best of it with 60 minutes of DFS and sports betting advice, huh? Kicking things off in the NFL this morning with DraftKings contributors Reed Fowler and Jeff Ulrich. This is cover to cover, so will the following teams cover their spread in the divisional round? So Vikings at 49ers. San Fran is favored by 6.5. Do they cover, Reed?
I thought you were going to start with Jeff because he made a...
I know. Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to his Thielen take.
I was the only one who actually showed up on this show. I'd like to mind you for this roasting that I'm going to get by Ulrich here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, everyone cares, especially me. This one's interesting because it kind of has the same feeling like we had when Minnesota went to New Orleans in the Superdome, right? They're 6.5-point dogs going on the road, and we know what the Vikings can do to teams, especially their defense. And this is why I mentioned earlier last week when talking about that spread being a little too high is that this team is built for the playoffs. Everyone's healthy. We saw what Dalvin Cook was able to do, and we see what Kirk Cousins can do with time. If you look at what they were able to do and really how they were able to win that game was time of possession. They had 10 more minutes of time of possession over the Saints, and that's really what you have to do when you have these high-powered offenses like the Saints. Now you go to San Francisco, who's not necessarily really good at home. When you look at what they've done at home, that's really where they falter a little bit. Their ATS, you think a strong team like the 49ers, ATS is pretty good, but they're not that good. So I'm going to say too high right now. This should be interesting because San Francisco will get most of their guys back, like Quan Alexander and Dee Ford.
Jeff, I mean, you're the Vikings whisperer. What do you think?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit of a similar setup to last week. I mean, look, if Adam Thielen is back, and obviously he's pretty much back to 100%, it really does help Minnesota's chances here. I mean, one area that San Francisco has kind of been vulnerable against over the last 2 years is slot receivers. They weren't great against at the start of the year. Obviously, they're a little bit banged up still in the secondary. I'm still going to say that this is a little bit too low. I really just feel like you give Kyle Shanahan a free week here. I know Minnesota came in and beat up the Saints and kind of beat them at their own game, but I don't think they can do that 2 weeks in a row. And I really do feel like San Francisco is the better team here. They also came in and beat New Orleans in the Superdome. They've been dominant at times against kind of, mid to above average teams. I will side with the better coach here and, quite frankly, just the better scheme. I just don't trust. The other thing is I don't trust Kirk Cousins and the Vikings outdoors. Basically, since Kirk Cousins has come to the Vikings, they've beaten 3 teams all out when playing outdoors, and all those teams have had losing records. they've been kind of blown out against teams like good teams outdoors. So take that for what it's worth. I don't really trust the Vikings on the road here at all. I'll take San Francisco.
Yeah, really quickly, if you look at what Zimmer did as well in terms of the play calling, he was very conservative in a lot of good spots that let the Saints give him a chance to come back in. If he does it against 49ers, especially against Shanahan, that's going to be tough.
It's a good point. I mean, realistically, the Saints probably should have won that game in regulation if they had managed the clock. So, again, I don't really love the Vikings.
All right, guys, the Titans knocked off Tom Brady, and as a reward, they have to face Lamar Jackson. So Ravens are favored by 8.5 in this one. Jeff, is that an easy cover for the Birds?
I think this line might have opened a little bit higher. I think this line is probably about right at 8.5. I'm still going to side with Tennessee here, though. So maybe I do think it's a little bit high. I don't think it's going to be an easy cover at all. Look, first of all, we'll look at the trends. I mean, Baltimore has not been great covering spreads at home. They're like, I can't remember what the exact record is, but they have a severe losing record at covering the spread since Lamar Jackson took over as QB. And it's nothing against Lamar Jackson. This is just a run-first team. The thing about Tennessee is they can run too. And when you have two good running teams going up against each other, if Derrick Henry gets going in this game, this is going to become kind of a battle of attrition, a little bit to what we saw last week. Now, yes, the Baltimore Ravens offense is better than New England's, and I do think that Baltimore will have a much better shot at pulling off the win here. But 8.5 points with the quarterback playing as well as Tannehill, a running back that can control the pace, make this a slower paced, lower scoring game like Derrick Henry. I think 8.5 is too much. I'll take Tennessee.
Reed, what do you think?
Yeah, so what Jeff was talking about, if you just look at the Ravens as favorites, they're 6-1 ATS in their last 7 games, but at home 2-7 ATS in their last 9 games at home. And again, you look at this team and what they're built so well is to control the clock and run the ball, and that's what you do when you're on the road, and especially when you have when you're in the playoffs. But I will say, when you look at this team and you look at the Ravens, how they're set up, like this line moved up to 10. Right when Tennessee beat New England and the lines came out pretty quickly, this bumped up to 10. So when you look at the sharps and the early money, it was a lot on Baltimore. Reason being is that they just really don't have any deficiencies right now, especially on both sides of the ball. When you look at what they can do, it's just they've been blowing out teams again. But when you look at the coaching and the quarterback play, which is really what you do in the playoffs, Harbaugh with the rest advantage is so good. He's like the Andy Reid, which is someone that we'll get to in a little bit. These guys who are really good coaches and have been here a lot, especially with a young team like the Ravens, with the rest advantage, they're pretty good ATS. So give me the Ravens right now, but at this 8.5, which is nice. If it starts getting up to 9.5, then I'm going to side with Tennessee.
All right. Well, Andy Reid, Houston visits Kansas City, where the Chiefs are favored by 10. So, Reid, do the Chiefs cover?
I think they do. Look, 11-5 ATS is a league high. I think along with the Rams as well. But again, when you look at Kansas City, and this is kind of the lines of the bookmakers saying, you guys don't deserve to be here, Houston. You should have lost that game in Buffalo. Deshaun Watson pulled a rabbit out of his hat. He's fantastic. He's one of the best quarterbacks that we have in the league right now. But when you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, again, they can beat you in so many different ways. What you do like too, especially, is special teams. I mean, their special teams is one of the best in the NFL, one of the best in the playoffs. And so again, when you talk about playoffs, and we're going to keep hearing me say this over and over again, is how can you control the clock? How can you look at coaching and really leaning on that? And you have one of the best who has after a bye, after a rest advantage. You see those numbers coming in. Andy Reid since 2015, 4-3 ATS, but his margin of victory in those is close to 10 points. So give me Kansas City here, even though it's high.
Jeff, what do you think?
This is the one I'm most conflicted about, because Deshaun Watson over his career has been against these big spreads, he's been a cover machine. He just does not lose by more than one touchdown very often. You saw the reason why against Buffalo. The guy just does not quit. He's impossible to stop for the full 4 quarters. Eventually, he's either going to make it a close game or pull out the victory, right? So I'm still going to side with Kansas City, saying all that. I do feel like Andy Reid coming off a bye here just has a huge advantage over Bill O'Brien. It's a home game at Arrowhead. And yes, Deshaun Watson's amazing, but he's going up against Patrick Mahomes, who could literally put up a 35 burger here or something. So I just believe that the Chiefs are a much more complete team. They have so many advantages in this game, in my opinion, including at head coach. I think the quarterback thing is basically neutral in this situation. So I'm going to say that this line's about right, but I'll still take Kansas City.
And you're going to hear a lot of Will Fuller noise, too, that Will Fuller's coming back. But again, look at this secondary and what they've done over the last, half dozen games. I mean, they've been great. So temper expectations, even if Will Fuller is back.
All right, guys, finally, Seattle visits Green Bay, who's favored by 4. Jeff, do the Packers cover the spread?
Oh, yeah. Green Bay is, I just feel like Green Bay, I'm going to be talking down about them the entire playoffs, and they're going to probably make it to the Super Bowl. The NFC is wide open. I can't in conscience take Green Bay to cover here. I mean, Seattle's been a good road team. They got a winning record against the spread. Obviously, they just went on the road in Philly and won their last playoff game. Green Bay, to me, has just been a bit of a fraud, really letting down in certain spots, not really playing up against elite competition, playing down most of the season. Again, Seattle, just a very, very strong road team. I think this matchup is very, very good for Seattle because the Packers on offense kind of want to make it a bit of a slow, ugly game as well, and then just rely on the arm of Aaron Rodgers. These are two very similar teams, and I kind of think Seattle does it a little bit better, although they are banged up at running back. But 4 points, that's just too much for me to give to Seattle, especially on the road. I'll take the Seahawks.
Reed, too much for you.
This one's tough. I actually really thought that Seattle wasn't going to win that game. Carson Wentz, that whole injury, that did,
Oh, don't blame Carson Wentz.
Oh, come on. Oh, you think that?
They beat him earlier in the season too.
That had a little bit to do. Look, we've seen the Eagles win without Carson Wentz. I get it, but it's an easy scapegoat for Jeff and everyone who, like the Seahawks, say Carson Wentz doesn't matter, but he actually does matter. And that was last week. Anyway, talking about this week, look, Green Bay is a team that we really can't figure out. I mentioned that they feel like one of these teams, when you talk about March Madness and you talk about all that stuff, that just beat up on teams really that didn't have a lot of clout and then got into the playoffs with a high seed. You can't take anything away from them in terms of what they can do in the playoffs. And they're 5-1 ATS in their last 6 playoff games. Now, again, different coaching scheme, different team. When you talk about the receivers, I'm not necessarily a huge believer in Seattle just yet. Green Bay's got the home field advantage in Lambeau Field in the playoffs. We know what that can do. I'm going to side with Green Bay right now. If this starts to move down, then Seattle, again, it's Russell Wilson. And now we're seeing DK Metcalf and what he can do. The secondary, Jair Alexander, and these guys, not necessarily playing as well as they did earlier in the season. That's going to be a huge matchup to watch out for. But give me Green Bay right now.
All right, guys, we have some breaking news here. And speaking of Green Bay, perfect transition here. Jay Glazer is reporting that Mike McCarthy is the new head coach of the Cowboys. So how do you like this hire, Reed? Laugh it up, buddy.
I mean, when you expect the Cowboys to really do something different and not go back to the same style of coach. I mean, Mike McCarthy is better than Jason Garrett. Just like if you take him in a vacuum and you say nothing else, he is better in terms of what he's been able to do. Maybe you look at Jerry Jones is looking at Mike McCarthy and said, look what he's done with Aaron Rodgers. Maybe he can do that with Dak Prescott. But if you're the Cowboys, I don't know why you just didn't switch it up. Go with a guy like Lincoln Riley, infuse some spark into this entire fan base and he just kind of went with a lukewarm pick. I don't like it. Mike McCarthy's a great coach, but just not for Dallas.
I mean, Jeff, the guy won a Super Bowl, went to 3 other NFC championship games. Like, what do you think of this hire?
Yeah, I mean, that's because he had Aaron Rodgers as quarterback and a good receiving core. Look, he's got talent to work with. Mike McCarthy wants to run the ball. He wants to play, smash mouth football, whatever. He wants to be the guy. He does have the tools to do that with Zeke Elliott. I'd be a little bit wary of what the production's going to be with the wide receivers there next year. But a lot of the similar problems, Reed's right, are going to show up. Game management, player personnel, whatever. It's going to be interesting to see play out. I'm not sure if he is actually an upgrade over Jason Garrett, maybe just from a fresh voice perspective, but we'll see. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe he's changed his ways. I doubt it. I don't really like the hire, but anything is probably better than Jason Garrett for the Cowboys right now. So take that for what it's worth.
Twitter's going to be going wild. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll have you back for Over Under in a bit. But we're taking a look at tonight's NBA slate after Adam Kaufman catches up with this year's fantasy football world champion, Jesse Martin.
Not many people go out to watch football one afternoon and leave $2 million richer, but Jesse Martin here knows exactly what that's like. I'm Adam Kaufman, and Jesse won DraftKings Fantasy Football World Championship in Miami last month. So how'd you get started playing DFS?
Been a professional poker player, so it was kind of a natural thing that, a lot of poker players transitioned to. And I actually tried to avoid it as long as I could, just because I knew that I would love it. So I was really focused on poker, doing well, and I was scared that it was going to divert my attention, which honestly, once I started playing, it did. Instead of learning, or getting better at weaker games of mine, like Pot Limit Omaha, I would be studying, DraftKings or, the upcoming NFL slate. I just love it. I think it's about as much fun as you can have.
Let's talk about that winning lineup for FFWC, because you had some popular plays, Saquon Barkley, Tyler Higbee, Christian McCaffrey in Week 15, but what was your lineup building strategy?
So I really liked that week just because it's kind of how I like to play. If I can identify a chalk running back that I think is good chalk, then I'm always happy to play them. Because often, those are just two great spots for McCaffrey and Barkley. And honestly, I was pretty dedicated to having Boston Scott also. I watched the Monday night game, the Eagles versus Giants the week before, and I already preparing for the live final because the prices were already out. And during that game, I looked at his price. I was like, wow, this guy's min-priced, and the role he has come into, he's going to be on the field next week. Just the same, so I was happy to save some salary there. And then Higbee was just such a lock play. Also, I just didn't feel like fading him either. So those guys were really all just kind of locked in for me. And I don't know how much bias was behind the Patriots defense pick, but I'm a big Patriots fan. I'm from Massachusetts, but just felt like the market had gotten sick of the Patriots, and especially. The market also for DFS and DraftKings specifically likes to pay down at defense if possible. So I just didn't feel like the Patriots at 4,000 were going to be that high owned. And I felt like they had a great shot to have a great week. They had a big mismatch of defensive, offensive line stuff that I looked at. From there, I'm a Patrick Mahomes guy, and that's not too crazy to say. I think a lot of people are, but if I had one game to play a football game that I needed to win, I still think Patrick Mahomes is the guy. When the snow came, there's a whole other process where I had to go back and see how Patrick Mahomes did the snow games. And, I was sitting in this exact chair with a minute left with my head in my hands, just like that, just being like, am I really going to play this guy in a blizzard? Like, I could switch to Mahomes, to Godwin, I could switch to Watson, to Hopkins, I could, blow it up and play a Garoppolo stack, which I would have had to probably take out Higbee, so I could play Kittle, but at the end, for better or worse, I stuck with Mahomes. I thought he was going to be really low owned. I thought Tyreek was going to be really low owned, and it worked out.
Do you plan to be in next year's championship, defend your title?
Sure, I will try to qualify. I qualified this year on the showdown slates, which was kind of a new thing for me in DFS this year. I didn't really play much showdown last year. This year I got into it, and I lived in New York City for a long time, so I'd love to qualify for this NBA Live final coming up in Hoboken.
Hopefully we'll have a chance to meet you out there in Hoboken and take this thing to the next level for you. But congratulations again on winning FFWC, and on to next year as well, hopefully.
Time to talk about the 9-game slate in the association. We have DraftKings contributor Julian Edlow, Matt LaMarca of the Action Network. They are here. So guys, let's just get into it. Sixers favored by 7 at home. Can they cover the spread against OKC? Julian, little chase or fade here?
Yeah, I'm going to fade this. OKC has been a tremendous team against the spread this season, particularly on the road. They're 12-5 against the spread on the road. And I think people are a little bit afraid of Philly because they are 16-2 straight up at home, but they're just average against the spread. They're 9-9 in those games. So while they've been dominating from a victory perspective, they've performed about how we would think they would when we factor in these spreads. So OKC's been hot lately. They've covered 5 in a row overall, so I'm going to take the team plus points here.
Matt, where are you going on this one?
Yeah, I'm taking the points as well. OKC is not bad, right? Like, they're top 13 in defensive efficiency and offensive efficiency. They play really slow, which should keep the possessions in this game down a bit. I think that, people may have underestimated OKC at the start of the season. A lot of people saw the Russell Westbrook trade and thought that they might be, tanking, but this team has actually been better with Chris Paul than they were with Russell Westbrook, which, as long as Chris Paul is healthy, I don't think that's like a huge hot take to say that they're a better team making that switch. So it'll be interesting to see if they can continue to play at this level. But right now, with this team, basically fully healthy, I think this is too many points.
All right, the game total between Boston and Washington is set at 226.5. Matt, do you like them to go over that?
Yeah, I basically take the over in like every Washington game. They play really, really fast and they play no defense. That's a good combination. Boston has overperformed this season. Like, they are making all the people that thought they'd be better without Kyrie Irving look smart. So I don't see any reason why they should struggle in this contest. I will take the over.
Julian, where are you going?
Yeah, I mean, like Matt said, I'm never going to bet the under on a Wizards game. It's just a question of whether you want to bet the over or not. And this one gets a little bit trickier because Kemba Walker is going to remain out, because Bradley Beal is questionable leading up to all these slates. Those are guys that put up points. But at the same time, this is more about just the pace and how Washington chooses to play zero defense. The Celtics have kind of grind out some lower scoring-ish games without Kemba against inferior competition, but I think this one should be paced up. I would definitely lean with the over here.
Brooklyn visiting Orlando. Spencer Dinwiddie's point total is set at 25.5. Do you like him to go over that, Jules?
I'm actually going to go with the under here. You look at his game log right before Christmas, he had like a 41-point game, a 39-point game. He can put up big numbers. But at the same time, his last 5 games, he's stayed under this mark in 4 of them. And he's going against Orlando, which is a slower-paced defensive team, ranked top 10 against point guards. So it's a pretty big number. It's about 3 points higher than his season average. So I'm going to lean with the under here, given the matchup.
Matt, does this matchup make you want to go with the under?
Yeah, I'm going to take the under as well. I mean, it's obviously a good spot for Dinwiddie with Kyrie Irving and Karis LeVert still out of the lineup. Dinwiddie has dominated the ball with both guys off the court this season, usage rate of basically 35%. So I don't feel super strong with taking the under, but the matchup against Orlando is really like one of the worst that you can target in DFS in the prop market. They play really slow. They're pretty good defensively. That keeps point totals down for the most part. So I'll take the under, despite the fact that Dinwiddie should have a pretty high usage expectation.
All right, highest game total on the slate tonight is between Milwaukee and San Antonio. It's set at 229. Do they reach that over, Jules?
I think they do, and you'll take the square approach and just look at the last game. These two played each other in their last game. Milwaukee won 127-118, so we saw a ton of points. This total is set a lot lower than what we saw in that game. You don't necessarily think over with the Spurs, but they are a pretty decent team, 11-7-1 to the over in home games this season. The Bucks obviously play at a pretty rapid pace. They have the ability to blow any team out, which can also lead to, higher scoring fourth quarters in games to help you get those overs. So yeah, I'm leaning with the over here, and mostly just pointing to the last game where we saw significantly more points than this total is set at.
LaMarca, you think it's going over?
Yeah, I'll take the over here as well. I mean, Milwaukee first in pace, first in offensive efficiency, and this Spurs team is not the Spurs team that we've become accustomed to watching over the past 2 decades or so. Like, they're a really poor defensive team. They're in the bottom 10 in terms of defensive efficiency, which makes this a spot where Milwaukee could go off. The bigger question is, can the Spurs do their part to hit the over on this total? I'm not 100% sure that they can. But like Julian mentioned, if this game does turn into a blowout, we could see, a fourth quarter with a lot of backups in, and those can tend to be a little bit of a higher scoring contest. So I'll take the over. I think that Milwaukee does more than enough, and San Antonio just sort of has to do their end a little bit, maybe more than certain people expect.
All right, largest spread of the night is Sacramento favored by 11.5 at home over Golden State. So Matt, can the Kings cover that big spread? We know there are some injury concerns for the Warriors.
Yeah, it's crazy because Sacramento is not a particularly good team. To think about laying, double digits with them is a little bit scary, but Golden State is going to have nobody tonight. They're going to have no Draymond, no D'Angelo Russell, no Kevon Looney. Obviously, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson are still out. That's an entire starting five that they're missing right there. So they're playing, going to be relying on big minutes for guys like Eric Paschall and Marquise Chris. And it's just really bad in Golden State right now. So Sacramento has their own injury concerns without Bogdan Bogdanovic more than likely, but I still struggle to take Golden State here. I think that, just all the injuries that they've had, it's going to be so tough for them to play competitive basketball games. So I'll take the Kings. I don't feel great about it, but I think that, given the injuries in Golden State, they're my preferred side here.
Jules, it might not feel good, but do you have to take the Kings here?
You don't have to, because they're not a great home team or just a great team overall, like Matt said. I mean, they're 7-10 straight up at home. They're 6-11 against the spread at home. So, laying double digits on a team like that doesn't feel right, but it also doesn't feel right to bet on this Warriors team with no bodies. So I guess that's just a long way of saying I probably wouldn't bet any of my own money on this game. But if I'm picking a side, I guess I would lean Sacramento just because of how bad the Warriors are going to be with the players that they have out there. They already got downgraded a tier with all of their best players hurt, Curry, Thompson, etc., Draymond, and now even their secondary guys are all out as well. They just don't have enough bodies, so that would have me lean Sacramento. I would probably feel more comfortable. The Warriors are terrible defensively when Draymond doesn't play. I would maybe look at something like the Sacramento team total if you want to bet on the Kings or something rather than the spread. But if you made me play the game, yeah, I would take the Kings.
All right, guys, we're going to have you back in a little bit. We're going to talk more basketball. We're going to talk more football. But right now, it's time to talk hockey with DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich, who really does it all. Jeff, you know the drill. This is NHL Price Check. Tell me if the following players are priced right on tonight's 4-game slate. So Nathan MacKinnon is the highest priced skater tonight at 8,300. He is on fire with 8 points over his last 3 games. So are you paying up for him?
I mean, at this point, there's basically not a bad time to pay up for Nathan MacKinnon. Obviously, just like a shots on goal machine. It's pretty much one of the worst matchups, though, you could hope for your forwards. Not hope for, obviously, see. But, the Islanders, obviously, like a slow-paced team, don't allow a ton of shots on net. I feel like with some of the other matchups on the board, I mean, Winnipeg, Montreal just has shootout written all over it. I feel like you probably want a couple of the Jets top line forwards there. And then McDavid going back to Toronto is a pretty big narrative story. He's actually pretty cheap at 7,500. I dare say that you can probably fade MacKinnon on the slate, although his ownership might be depressed because of these other good matchups. So I'm okay fading him here. I really do feel like with all the players available around the 7K range, Jets, even the cheaper guys on Montreal and McDavid, like I mentioned, and the Leafs players too, fading MacKinnon at 8,300 is actually okay tonight.
Okay, well, Toronto's Mitch Marner has really been producing lately, averaging 15.5 DK points over his last 10 games. Do you like him in his matchup with Edmonton tonight at 6,800? Again,
it's okay to go with Marner, especially if you want to pair him with his center, obviously, in Matthews or stack the Toronto power play. But I just feel like the appeal with Patrick Laine at 7,100 and Kyle Connor at 6,600 is just more appealing for me. I mean, both of these guys have been on fire. Laine had 13 shots on goal a couple nights ago. He's coming off a slow night, but I mean, again, it's Montreal. They allow, they're a bottom 10 team in terms of shots allowed on net. They don't have a good power play. A bottom 10 team in terms of penalty kill as well. The Jets' power play has been rolling. I would prefer stacking one of those guys with Mark Scheifele tonight rather than going with Marner. But again, we're talking about a 4-game slate. So really we have to consider all these players. Marner, if you can fit him in with Lane, is probably fine. But as far as how I'd rank them, I'd go Lane and probably even Connor in front of Marner.
All right, let's talk the blue line. Blue Jackets defenseman Zach Werenski has 5 goals over his last 3 games. He's going to cost you $5,300 tonight on the road against the Kings. Do you like him at that price?
Yeah, I definitely don't mind this price for Werenski. It's a really solid matchup, obviously. The Kings, they don't have the greatest penalty kill. I will say this. I do kind of like the Kings in this game, so I guess I'm not super high on Werenski and the Columbus Jackets offense in total, but I do like this price because, again, if you're just playing the stats and not worrying too much about home games or momentum and how teams have been playing, then, I mean, Werenski at 5,300 against the Kings is pretty much it's a solid target to go with. Obviously, you probably want some exposure to the Columbus Blue Jackets power play if you're going to go with Werenski, so you can pair him with one of the cheap forwards. I do prefer him, I think, a little bit over Drew Doughty, too, as well, who's been a little bit slow point producing lately. So again, it's maybe not like my favorite play. I think Neil Pionk down at 4,700 on the Jets is probably a little bit preferred. But Werenski 5,300. If you don't want to pay up for like Clefbaum or Weber up in the 6K range, then going down to Werenski is absolutely fine tonight. The matchup's still good regardless of how the Kings have played at home over the year.
All right, finally, let's take a look at the Jets and Canadiens matchup. Ilya Kovalchuk could be in line to make his Montreal debut after being acquired from LA last week. So very cheap tonight, $3K price tag. Would you consider playing him if he suits up?
I don't think so. I mean, look, Kovalchuk, his whole career has just been, you can't really trust the guy, right? Especially later in his career. I mean, it's not the same Ilya Kovalchuk either. So, I get it. I mean, he might slot in. It's not like Montreal has a ton of depth on the wings or any real high-end scorers that he's going to have to overcome. So you could see some power play work right off the bat. But again, I mean, you look at some of these young players on Montreal. I mean, I really like Nick Suzuki tonight, who's been getting over 20 minutes of ice per game. And I don't think Kovalchuk's necessarily just going to cut right into that. So Suzuki's been playing, seeing plenty of time on the power play, playing alongside Max Domi. Unless we get really news that, somehow that's just going to change. I would prefer just paying up for Suzuki at 4K. And even, maybe not Cousins, but yeah, like I said, there are other plays on Montreal other wingers, I should say, on Montreal who are in play tonight who are almost as cheap. I don't think you just have to go with the savings. If you do want a cheap player around the 3K range, Kyler Yamamoto on the Oilers is playing on the second line. I would much prefer playing him over Kovalchuk tonight. Yamamoto's been playing over 16 minutes. Playing alongside Leon Draisaitl. That's a much better spot, in my opinion, than Kovalchuk.
All right, Slate Approved Pick Time. Who is your lock for tonight's 4-game slate?
Yeah, I'm going with Connor McDavid. I mean, 7,500. It's just too cheap. He's making his return to Toronto. He's got 11 points in 8 games against Toronto in his career. I know he's been a bit of a slower pace from a fantasy perspective over his last 10 games. I think he's going to put up a big game, though, here. The Oilers look better in their last game. They need a win here, so give me McDavid.
All right, Jeff, you'll be right back to talk football. So to get us ready, how about we rewind the tape here and get your take from Saturday on how Adam Thielen was going to fare against the Saints.
My make it rain pick is Adam Thielen. Again, we're targeting the highest point total here by far. I know Adam Thielen's a bit of an injury risk, but look, I think it's worth taking. He's going to have a good matchup in the slot. Vikings are going to be passing late in this game. We've seen teams like Carolina put up over 30 points. San Francisco put up over 40 points in the Dome. In New Orleans, I think Adam Thielen is going to come through for people who take a chance on him today.
Rosalie, you did not look impressed. Everyone else was giggling. You look angry.
No, I'm confused. I'm absolutely confused because it's the Make It Rain segment, right? I'm in the right segment right now.
Yeah. No, you have it right.
Okay, because I'm confused. Because Thielen's not had. He's had 3 games at 8 targets out of the 10 that he's played. That's the most that he's had. His opportunity has been injured. No, but even in the games he played, his target share has gone way down, even in the games that he's playing. So plus I don't know that he's going to make it through the whole game. So, and what did I say earlier? Dalvin Cook. They're going to feed him a lot. It's going to be a lot of Dalvin Cook. I think you're just stacking with that Kirk Cousins thing. So I'm confused by the Thielen. Diggs I could see, but the Thielen thing, don't know.
I want to go back to Jeff real quick because he made this big presentation crapping on our picks. So I'm expecting him to come back with well, here's Drew Brees or something. Yeah. He comes out of left field with Adam Thielen. Look, I'll give you a chance to change your pick. If you want to change it Will Fuller, you can do that too. If you're going to throw someone like Adam Thielen out there, you came in all high and mighty and you throw Adam Thielen in the mix. Okay, dude, you stay in Canada, okay? Absolutely amazing.
Look, I don't come to Jeff's defense quite a bit. GPP's fine, but have that qualifier, sure. Jeff. GPP's make it rain because you can't trust this guy at all. And I guess the secondary, look, Marshawn Lattimore has been fantastic against opposing receivers. So yeah, maybe, but come on, Jeff.
Yeah, not a make it rain pick. Are you out of your mind?
Is out.
Well, Jeff's make it rain play. 9 targets, 7 receptions, 129 receiving yards for 22.2 fantasy points. Jeff, the man himself is here. Jeff Ulrich, he really nailed it. I mean, Reed, you kind of just got to give Jeff credit here, right? I mean, do you need to bow down here? Anything you want to say?
Yeah, that a broken clock is right twice in a day. I mean,
wow.
This guy... Look, Adam Thielen, fine. Like I mentioned, like I said in that clip, I don't come to his defense that much in the GPP. And if you also notice that Jeff likes to hedge his bets, when he says someone is going to go off, he's probably not going to go off. And so really, I don't know. But look, Adam Thielen, he had that huge catch, that 43-yard catch that definitely helps in this number. But when you looked at what he was able to do and his ceiling in past games, you liked where he was at, and he wasn't getting a ton of ownership. I personally can take the hit in the chin, but at the same time, I got to respect the pick, Jeff. It was a good one.
Jeff, anything you want to say?
I actually think we got a little unlucky there. I mean, he could have found the end zone a couple times. He's really close, but that would have been really disastrous for you guys if he had gone in the end zone as well.
We'll wait until we get into the next couple of segments because I have a good memory here on how Jeff felt about the Baltimore Ravens coming into this season as well.
Oh, do you want to just
say it right now? He thought the Ravens weren't going to be good. He thought the Cleveland Browns were going to win this division, and then we're going to be in the playoffs. And so, look, we all have bad takes. We're wrong most of the time. And so when you're right, you have to put it on the tape when you're right. So I appreciate that, Jeff.
All right, Jeff, that was us giving you credit, I guess.
I guess, yeah.
Good job, Jeff.
Good job, Jeff, but you suck. All right, well, now let's get into over-under, and like Reese said, we'll get into Baltimore, but are the following games going over-under their predicted totals? So Minnesota at San Fran, over-under 45.5, Jeff.
I'm going to take the over here. Again, San Francisco, especially at home, just been too dominant for me. I mean, outside of that, war of attrition against Baltimore where they only put up 17 points, this is a team that's just been 30 points, averaging 30 points in all their games here. And I'm not really scared that Minnesota on the road outdoors is going to be able to do what they did against the New Orleans offense. I feel like Kyle Shanahan, again, you give him a week to prepare. He's not going to have trouble putting up points. And, for even if it's kind of funny because I did predict that Kirk Cousins would be in a more voluminous role last week against the Saints down, but it didn't really play out that week. I think that will play out this week. And with Adam Thielen healthy, I feel like the Vikings can put up enough points here to hit the over. So at 45.5, I think that's too low. I'll take the over here.
Too low for you, Reed.
Yeah, and it kind of goes to the San Francisco defense as well. What we like to see in these over-unders is the defense not playing up to snuff, and they haven't. Over the last 4 games, they have allowed over 30 points to opposing teams, and which is really hard because if you look at DVOA and look at their stats, it's really strong in terms of that, but they're just giving up a ton of points in these matchups. And we've seen Minnesota in spots where they have had to score or they play these high-powered games be able to put up those points. And that's why when you go into this and you look at, over the last 6 road games, the Vikings are 5-1 hitting the over. It's really nice. And so, yeah, give me the over here at 45.5.
All right, Tennessee at Baltimore, 47.5. Reed, over or under? And Jeff, as we know, thought Baltimore was going to be bad, so...
Yeah, I have to. I mean, I can't give them all the credit. This one's a little bit tougher for me, and not necessarily because I don't think Baltimore can put up the points. When you just look at what they've been able to do, it's been nice in terms of that for hitting the over. It's really about Tennessee. If we're slating that Baltimore can score about, I'd say 21 to 28 points pretty comfortably, especially against this secondary. The only thing that scares me is how Tennessee wants to beat the Ravens, is to keep, and how they did it really with the Patriots. And now the Ravens are a completely different team than the Patriots, but give Derrick Henry 30-plus attempts and really slow down the game. I mean, in terms of pace, Tennessee is one of the lowest. But if you look at Baltimore and if you look at Tennessee secondary specifically, 21st in pass DVOA. And when Lamar Jackson faces a team of this stature, in terms of their secondary being not that good, he puts up points. He puts up a ton. So it's really going to come down to Tennessee. I don't necessarily think they can do it. So give me the under.
Jeff, where are you going?
Yeah, I do like the under in this spot. Obviously, you do have some high-profile players here. I mean, if Lamar Jackson breaks off like a 90-yard run or Derrick Henry does the same thing, I mean, this could get over quick. But you have two run-focused offenses here and two teams who play at slower pace. And if Tennessee does what they want, does the same thing with Derrick Henry, this is going to be a bit of a slogfest. We've seen teams who have had success against Baltimore, like Cleveland earlier in the year, even San Francisco. They've been able to move the ball on the ground a little bit, and they've just kept it, the game a little bit slower pace. Again, not letting Lamar Jackson break out for as many plays as they probably want to, keeping him off the field essentially. And I think Tennessee has the tools to do that. So I don't think it's going to be, what we saw last week necessarily against New England, but I think it's going to be kind of close. At 47.5, it's a pretty big number. I'm pretty happy taking the under here for me, considering the pace these two teams want to play out.
All right, pretty big number here. Houston at Kansas City, over or under 49, Jeff?
Yeah, this is a pretty solid under for me as well. You just look at the way Kansas City has played, especially in the second half of the year. A bit slower pace than last year. Defense has been playing much better, and that's the biggest thing. The secondary has been well improved. I think they're going to be able to contain DeAndre Hopkins, much like last week. Will Fuller being back might, add a little bit of difference to this, but I don't think he's 100% anyways. So I'm not going to change my pick based on that. I just feel like with the way Kansas City's defense has been playing, Deshaun Watson obviously pulled off some magic tricks last week. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that 2 weeks, especially on the road here. It's a lot to ask for two teams, especially a Houston team that I just don't really trust right now to put up points. So I think 49, solid under for me.
Reed, solid under for you?
Yeah, Kansas City, when you look at what they're doing, I mean, 4 of the last 5 games, they've hit the under, and the Texans are ranked near the bottom in hitting the over. I believe they're ranked 27th. They were 7-10 in terms of doing that this season. And it really, like Jeff mentioned, comes down to that defense in Kansas City, especially at home. And even their offense scores, their average winning margin in Arrowhead is 11. So they get up on these teams quickly, and they look to really slow down the game. They don't necessarily need to speed it up with the guys like Mecole Hardman, Tyreek Hill, and those guys. And so when you just look at what Andy Reid, and again, I keep on harking on it, in time of possession, you're going to see a lot of these guys in that backfield circulate through. The Damian Williams, this is where we really saw him perform extremely well last season, is when they get up, and they can get up pretty quickly on any team, they're just going to slow the clock down. So give me the under.
All right, Green Bay at Seattle, over or under 46, Reed?
I want to take the under just because I don't believe in these teams, but I really think this is going to go over. Again, Seattle coming into this, they're going to need to pass the ball quite a bit. I know you can run against Green Bay. I know they're one of the worst teams in terms of defending the run, but when you just look at what Russell Wilson can do on the road, can do in terms of like against the spread and not over under, I just think this has a feeling of going over, even though both of these teams like to run the ball and run the ball a lot. I just think when you look at what Seattle has to do to be in this game, stay in this game, it's going to be passing a ton. So give me the over.
Russell Wilson versus Aaron Rodgers. Jeff, come on, you got to go over.
Look, Reed wasn't on par with my Adam Thielen picks, but he's in lockstep with me here, so we're good this week. I agree. I think this has a good shot at taking the over. I think I would lean over here. Look, 7 of the last 8 of Green Bay's games have gone under this total, so it's a little bit worrisome, but you've got 2 elite quarterbacks here and 2 not really great defenses. I know Seattle's defense played okay last week. They're going up against Josh McCown, a really banged up Philly team. I think with Green Bay, going to have a similar strategy, but just with more effective players. I mean, it's that simple. And yeah, Russell Wilson can get it done on the road. We saw with DK Metcalf, obviously Tyler Lockett. The run game now without obviously Chris Carson is a little bit more improved now that Travis Homer has had a couple weeks to get involved. So I do think that with these 2 quarterbacks going up against 2 defenses that can be taken advantage of in multiple areas, Green Bay especially on the ground, I'm with the over here for sure.
All right, thanks, guys. You two are free to go, but we're sticking with football. This time, though, it's about the college game. Let's bring in DraftKings contributor Julian Edlow for a LendingTree Bowl breakdown. So, Jules, Louisiana, Lafayette, and Miami, the Ohio one, will square off Monday night in Mobile. The Ragin' Cajuns are favored by 14.5. Do they cover?
So I'm hoping this number goes back to 14, or you can buy it to 14. 14.5 is a tough number, and it got bet here for a reason, because ULL has been so good this season. They've covered their last 11 games that they've been favored by double digits. They've covered in 8 of those games. 2 of their 3 losses outright this season were in that Sun Belt Conference to Appalachian State, who was ranked in the top 25 and had a fantastic season. So the Ragin' Cajuns are a very good team. And I think if you can get this at 14, I would like to have that protection on pushing on a 2-touchdown victory. But this one could easily be a blowout. And that's nothing too bad about Miami of Ohio. They're a good team, but I just think the Ragin' Cajuns have been much better this season, faced much better competition, and should win this one by 2 touchdowns.
The total for this one is 55. Are you taking the over or the under, Julian?
I'm going to lean to the over just because Louisiana Lafayette has had such a good offense this season. They have the 8th ranked offense nationally. They average over 500 yards per game. They have a great passing game. They have a great rushing game. So Miami's defense hasn't really done anything that would tell me that they're going to be able to prevent Louisiana Lafayette from moving the ball down the field on a pretty consistent basis. At the same time, not the best defense for the Ragin' Cajuns, so Miami should be able to not necessarily keep up because we think that they're going to cover by 2 touchdowns here, but at least get some points on the board. So this is one where I feel like Louisiana Lafayette can score about 40 points or so. So that just leaves, 15, 16, 17 points from Miami gets you your over with a ULL cover.
All right, Julian, you did such a good job. I'm going to have you just stay with me as I bring in the other half of our NBA panel for one last go-around. You're welcome, Julian. Just big fan, big fan. All right, Matt LaMarca of the Action Network is here. I'm a fan of yours too, Matt. So,
thank you.
You're so welcome, you guys. This is NBA Building Blocks. So who are you building your lineup around at each position on tonight's NBA slate? So we start at the center. Matt, who are you going with?
Yeah, so I'm going a little bit cheaper at center because we have a lot of other people that we might want to pay up for today. I'm going with Rashawn Holmes at 6,600 versus the Warriors. We already mentioned, the Warriors' current injury situation. They are going to be very thin tonight, and they have already been crushed by opposing big men this season. So Holmes is somebody that I really like. He is a fantasy point per minute type of guy. And he should see plenty of playing time with Marvin Bagley still out for the Kings. So I expect him to see, around 34 minutes in this game, and that should be more than enough for him to pay off his salary.
All right, Matt, saving some money at center. Where are you going, Jules?
Yeah, so since Matt saved us some money, I'll give you a pay-up spot. Nikola Vucevic at $8,300. I just think he's one of the safer players to pay up for, who's not necessarily a break-the-bank stud, but, over 8,000, that's a significant chunk of salary. But he just gets 40 to 45 points every single slate. So if you're playing cash games, I think that he's a guy where you're going to get your points. He very rarely busts. And while he may not have quite as high a ceiling as you'd like, the matchup against Brooklyn is one that should help him out. It's a great matchup for centers. So I just think you know what you're getting here. He's not going to hurt you, and the matchup gives him as high a ceiling as he'll have in almost any matchup.
All right, Julian, who's your building block at forward tonight?
So at forward, I will save you some money here, and I'll go with Thaddeus Young for $3,700. He's probably going to be another chalky play for the Indiana Pacers, but with no Malcolm Brogdon. That leaves Young a little bit more room on the perimeter. Messing up teams. Chicago. Thaddeus Young used to be on the Pacers. Sorry about that. Young's been playing really well, though, lately, nonetheless, despite my brain fart. Like I said, he's going to be chalky, but he's firmly in the rotation right now, playing really well. The matchup against Dallas, good team, blowout potential, but it doesn't really scare me away. Dallas has been involved in some really high-scoring games this season, so he's just a cheap plug-and-play, saves you the money when you pay up for Vucevic.
It's early. We forgive you, Julian.
I know.
Matt,
It's my first 10 a.m. show.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. All right, Matt, are you going to pay up at forward? You save some money at center.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that Thaddeus Young is a nice value option, but I'm going up. I am going to target the Pacers here. I'm going with Domantas Sabonis. I just like what he brings to the table. He has been, similar to Vucevic, like a very consistent, 40-plus points type of guy. No Malcolm Brogdon for the Pacers, which gives Sabonis a little bit of added upside. We have something at Fantasy Labs called Pro Trends. He leads all forwards with 13 Pro Trends today. And I think 8,600 is just a little too cheap for him. He's averaged like 1.3 DraftKings points per minute over the past month. Really nice matchup versus the Hornets. So I think he could actually be a little bit under the radar today just because there are going to be, some more expensive guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo, and then there are obviously the really cheap guys you can look to. So I think Domantas could be a little bit overlooked here, but I like him a lot at 8,600.
All right, Matt, who is your building block at guard?
Yeah, this one I'm going all the way to the top. I'm going with Luka Doncic. He is super expensive. He's 12,200, but I just don't know how you avoid him today. No Kristaps Porzingis again for Dallas, and Doncic has averaged 1.91 DraftKings points per minute with Porzingis off the court this season. If you look at his last game he played without Porzingis, he was up over 77 DraftKings points, had a usage rate of 42.2%, and gave you a triple-double. Like, this guy is basically in the same tier as Giannis and James Harden on like a night-to-night basis in terms of what he can do for you. And he's like 21 years old. So it's crazy how good this guy is. He should see a ton of minutes, and very few players are going to be more productive than him on a per-minute basis. So I'm locking him in. The salary doesn't scare me.
All right, Jules, who are you locking in at guard?
Yeah, I can't argue with Doncic at all. I can just give you another guard to help you save some money if you're going to play Doncic. So I'm going with Marcus Smart here at $5,200. I think we get him at a really affordable price because he had such a bad game against the Bulls on Saturday night. But you look at Friday night, 46.5 DraftKings points against the Hawks. And this is all because Kemba Walker's out of the lineup, obviously, for those two games. He'll remain out of the lineup here. And then we get the game that we talked about earlier in the show where Matt and I both said you're never going to bet a Wizards under because of that pace. You get Marcus Smart in a paced-up game with a significant usage bump, playing a lot of point guard with Kemba off the floor, boosted minutes, a role in the starting lineup. I just think Marcus Smart is going to have a much closer game to what he did against Atlanta on Friday night than he will to what he did against the Bulls on Saturday night. And that means 8, 9, 10x potential, and I'm not going to pass up on that.
Okay, Julian, well, we need a value play for tonight. Who are you going to go with?
Yeah, so I'm going with another $3,700 forward, and I'm positive that he's on the Golden State Warriors, and that is Eric Paschall. Again, we spoke earlier about are the Kings worth betting on -11, -11.5. Both Matt and I seem kind of iffy on that, but what we do know is that because all these guys are injured on the Warriors, they are going to have to put some players on the floor for major minutes. And particularly with Draymond Green off the floor, Paschall has been very good. He's going to be a go-to guy in this lineup. They just don't have any scorers out there, which creates a lot more scoring opportunities than he would normally see on the floor. He's a very good rebounder as well. And the Kings are not a team that, although they're double-digit favorites, not a team that are going to really scare you away from rostering opposing players.
All right, Matt, value, please.
Yeah, I'm sticking with the Warriors, but I'm going a little bit more expensive with my pick. I'm going with Marquise Chris at 4,800. I just love this guy's per-minute ability. He's averaged 1.19 DraftKings points per minute over the past month. And with all the other guys at forward out of the lineup, no Draymond Green, no Kevon Looney, like I think that he could see a really nice bump in minutes today. He's even displayed some ability as a playmaker recently. He's had, 5 assists in 2 of his last 3 games. So I think that this guy, in terms of like a per minute producer, is one of the better guys that you'll find in this price range. The only question is the minutes, and I think with their current injury situation, he's going to have to play more tonight.
All right, well, when you're looking at this slate, there's probably somebody you're saying, I am fading this person, staying away from them. Who is that person, Matt?
Yeah, so I think some people might be intrigued by Nikola Jokic. He's 9,200. He has a pretty good matchup against the Atlanta Hawks, who have been, terrible defensively and terrible on the glass this season. We know Jokic is capable of putting up those big games. So they may be able to talk themselves into rostering him at a pretty reasonable price tag. But I am just a little bit concerned about the lack of playing time with him recently. Like, he has been around 30 minutes, even below 30 minutes in most of his recent games. So he's going to have to be like super, super efficient when he's on the court for him to have like a ceiling type of performance. I just don't see that happening. Jokic, again, like his upside is really high when he's playing well, but we just haven't seen that from him. So for me, he's not somebody that I feel comfortable rostering tonight, even at, a pretty reasonable price tag for him.
All right, Jules, who are you fading?
Matt and I are on the same page because that was actually my kind of fade on the entire slate as well. I agree with pretty much everything he said. Jokic scored 35 DraftKings points against the Wizards and has scored fewer than that in each of his last 4 games. He's not playing that well. He's not playing that many minutes. I don't know why he is still over $9,000. I think that he should be significantly cheaper on a regular basis. But just to give you guys someone different, I guess, Giannis is under 11,000, which is very cheap for him, and I think that's going to make people want to play him. But you've got to go with Matt's guard there, Luka Doncic, and that just doesn't leave you room for Giannis. He's probable to play through a back injury, so he's going to play, but this could be another blowout against the Spurs. That means yanking Giannis. He only played 29 minutes in that game, scored under 50 DraftKings points. I could see him having a very similar game in San Antonio, in which case he's not worth rostering at all.
All right, guys, good stuff. That is a show. The Sweat will be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Be sure to tune in. See you then.